So the other thing that we want to say is figure out how, where, and who you pay which bills to each month. So maybe you deposit the rent directly into the owner's bank account. Maybe you pay a rental manager, or maybe you have to hand deliver the check to your landlord, or go and give them cash. It's when you're in these other countries, these are things that we really don't think about. So in Costa Rica, each time it was different. When you rent a property, it's been different. So the first place, just to give you all some examples, the first place that we ever rented out of the country, the owner of the property was from the United States. He had married a local, so he had everything still set up in the States as well. So we would just PayPal him our rent and we were good. That was so simple. The second place we did, he didn't have PayPal set up, but he owned a property in Costa Rica, but he lived in the States. So he set up PayPal, and so what we had to do was just PayPal him the money. The third place that we moved to in Costa Rica, he was Costa Rican, and all of his banks were set up in Costa Rica. He didn't have PayPal, and nor did we have a bank account in Costa Rica. So what we had to do was use our ATM card and take out our rent every month. And so that came with bank fees. I think they charged us, $5 per withdrawal, and we had to do about 2 or 3 withdrawals to get out the amount of money that we needed to pay the rent. So those are some things and fees that you want to be aware of when it comes down to how you're going to pay your rent. How are you going to pay your bills each month? Also, check for sales clause in your lease. What protection do you have against the owner selling the apartment and giving you limited notice that you have to move out? The lease should include a compensation allowance in the case that the place is sold while you're renting it. In a lot of these places, it really depends. Some countries are friendlier to the tenant, I'll put it that way. So some of these places you can't even get kicked out if you haven't paid your rent, or if whatever, it favors the tenant. Some of these places favor the owner. So these are all important things to know before you sign the lease. Also, understand who is responsible for setting up the utilities. Will they remain in the landlord's name, or should they be switched over to your name? What are the pluses and minuses if they stay in the landlord's name, or should they be in your name? So for example, what is your liability if the electric bill is transferred into your name? Also, sometimes if you're not a resident or don't have a visa, sometimes you can't even get utilities set up in your name. These are important things that you want to know. Also, ask what documentation do you have to produce to be able to rent. In some markets, you have to prepare a list of paperwork that includes like your recent bank statements, pay stub, reference letters, and sometimes even letters of guarantee. You have to give that all to your landlord before you'll be able to sign a lease. Some people, they'll just take your passport, and if you have your deposit and first month's rent, then you're good. Each place is a little bit different. Here in Medellin, Colombia, you needed to have fiadores, which are co-signers too. And if you don't have fiadores, which we didn't because we'd never been here before, then for a non-furnished apartment, this is only for non-furnished, then you have to pay, 6 months to a year in advance because you don't have any co-signers. So that's information that's important to people before you move to another country, because you just may not be prepared to pay rent for a year in advance. Some people can only afford to do it on a monthly basis. these are some things to be very, very knowledgeable of before you go and start renting properties or looking to rent properties. Also, this was something that was new to me as well. And that's what repairs and maintenance are you responsible for as a tenant. So, in some countries, renters can be responsible for structural repairs, including like cracks or things like a leaky roof. I know when we moved in one of the places in Costa Rica, we were responsible for everything. Like if the refrigerator broke down, we would have had to replace it. If the dishwasher stopped working, we would have had to fix it or whatever. Anything, appliances, anything that was broken, we would have to repair it. So, that's sometimes the disadvantage of renting fully furnished apartments as well. You are responsible for anything that you may not have really had anything to do with. Like I could see if we broke something to make it break down, but you don't really know the quality of some of these appliances before you move in. Okay, another thing worth mentioning is the document of any existing damage or current fixtures that are in the house. I'd say take photos. Mitch and I, we're real good about taking pictures before we move in and once we move out of the location. Before we move in, we like to take pictures of anything that looks abnormal, or when we move out, we like to just make sure that, we have it recorded that we left this house in tip top shape, just in case, because you never know what people are capable of and to have you responsible for. So just take photos just to cover yourself and, things of that nature. I think it's good to determine when the rental period begins. So the date you begin to pay your rent doesn't always coincide with the date that you take up occupancy. So I know that's kind of confusing, but we had a situation where we moved in or we paid our first month before we actually moved in. And so just make sure that those things line up with each other or that it is a clear time on the rental lease of the dates are correct, if that makes sense. Also understand what deposit you will be required to make. So the general rule is that you'll have to pay the first month's rent plus a deposit equal to 1 or 2 months rent. Just depends. So keep that in mind and make sure you have enough savings to cover your deposits as well. What the deposit is, in some places, in some countries, you almost don't even expect to see it again. So in some countries, it's even a joke where just look at it as part of the rent. Like you're not even going to get it back. In other countries, you have to post your deposit to like a place like a Department of Housing or something like that. And then that agency holds your funds and then they will release them at the end of the rental term. So if something needs to be deducted for damages, the landlord would have to report it to that agency. And then the renter is given a chance to sign off on the amount withheld for the repairs. So every country is different. And unfortunately, not all landlords are honest about things when it comes to the deposit. Sometimes you're just going to get a very hard time getting your deposit back. And it's not fair, but that is the risk. And so that's just something to be uh, uh, vigilant of when you're thinking about your deposit. Sometimes we're expecting our deposits living or coming from the United States. It's like, we move out, we want our deposit back, especially if everything is in tip-top shape. So be aware of that. You're in other countries and sometimes they just do not have rules and regulations set around your deposit, and sometimes they do. So that's something very important that I think that you should be thinking about. Also, moving to another country, when it comes to your lease, I wouldn't sign anything until you've either had a lawyer read it first or someone that you trust, because not all countries we move to is the same language as English. You know, we live in a Spanish country and everything that we have is always in Spanish. And so you're reading legal Spanish and then signing it as well. So you should use an attorney when signing a rental agreement in other countries, unless you're very familiar with tenants' rights and the particulars of rental contracts in the country where you're renting. And it also pays to even have an expert review the documents before you sign it. So a good attorney, somebody, a friend or something that you trust, that will be able to inform you of any negotiable clauses so that you have an opportunity to adjust the terms of the agreement, of the lease. So sometimes they'll say, you know, you can't move out until you give us 3 months notice. Well, 3 months out, a lot of times we don't know if you have another place, you know, that you can, you know, that's just unreasonable in my opinion. So you can get that altered and say, no, we want to give you a 30-day notice. Say that that internet is not included or utilities is not included. You may want that to be included, so you can talk to them. They may increase your rent a little bit, but you know, you can get that included or not included. Or if it comes with basic internet, you might want to have the highest internet. So you may have to do some type of clause written in the lease. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind, and that's, since we're talking about internet, is we always have to have the fastest internet that is available in that country. And so sometimes you'll go and you'll ask the people that you're getting ready to rent from, you'll say, well, how's the internet? And when you're not, you know, doing videos, uploading videos and anything like that, they say, hey, the internet is great here. But then when you move in, you find out it's unstable. It just doesn't go fast enough. You're not able, it'll take you a day to upload a video. So I always think that it's important to put that into the lease, like, and let the landlord know, if the internet here is not good, this will give us the reason to cancel the lease before the year is up. And so get that written down, because you can't live a whole year and not be able to run your online business. If you can't make a Skype call to do your conference calls or upload your videos to keep your business going, that place that you're renting is not conducive to your business. So those are just some things that came to mind when we're talking about, oh yeah, there's another thing that that just popped up, and it's some countries you don't even have to sign a lease. So don't be surprised about that. Sometimes outside of the main cities, even I hear in Panama or Nicaragua, the protocol for renting a house might just be a handshake rather than a written agreement. So this shouldn't necessarily make you nervous, but you know, don't be surprised if that's just what it is. We've never had to do that. Every place we've gone to, we've had a lease, we've had to have it signed, and we've had to have it translated for us in order to make sure that everything is in par. But I've heard, you know, that some places there is not even a lease. So take that for what it's worth.
Hey family, thanks again for watching another episode of Mitch and Donna's Journey. Don't forget to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and click the bell for notifications. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Thanks again for watching. Peace.